Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Files Obscura podcast. This episode is brought to you by the Anchor app. If you're like me and probably didn't know where to go to start a podcast or didn't know what to do, then you'll be very glad to hear that the Anchor app is free to download and gives you everything you need available on your phone or your laptop. And you'll be given all the tools you'll need to edit, to play music in the background, to have live guests record your episodes with you, and so much more. Anchor also allows you to distribute your podcast anywhere that you want to be heard, such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and the list goes on. I know ourselves, so far, we have at least 7 platforms. And another great thing is that you're able to start making money for your podcast with absolutely no minimum listenership. So if you're interested in starting tomorrow, you can also start recording advertisements tomorrow if you were so interested. But everyone goes at their own pace. All you need to know is that this is everything you need to make a podcast and so much more to help you along the way. It's user-friendly and easy to figure out, as time goes on and you figure yourself out. So all you need to do is go download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Once again, that was anchor.fm to get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron, and welcome back to Files Obscura. Today, as always, I am joined with my host,
Vladimir.
And today we are joined by a special guest host, my buddy Nathan Snowa.
Hey,
Hello, Nathan. Hey. So for those of you who don't know, Nathan is the guy who created our intro and outro, the awesome piece of music that we enjoy, and he's given us some interest in helping out with the podcast. And I'm going to be honest, this was a lot of statistics I hope to never read again. It's ridiculous because I wanted to, we often hear this being compared to the flu, and I can't tell you how many idiots I hear going on around us in Houston who say, well, I should be fine. I had the flu, this, that, and the other. And I'm just like, you don't realize how different this is. And to be honest, I didn't realize how different this was either until I went ahead and actually did the research, because I was able to look at the statistics for the 1918 Spanish flu, which we will talk a bit later. And we will go ahead and talk about, the coronavirus and that whole family, and the timeline of what happened from the initial outbreak in China to more or less what's going on now.
Yeah.
So you ready, Nathan? All right. Well, like always, we will start with our 2 truths and a lie. All right. So after doing a bunch of research, I found out a lot of things about the coronavirus and the flu. And, one thing I learned about the flu is that the flu viruses often originate in, China and the Southeast Asia region, but they often mutate and travel through birds and pigs and stuff. That's where we get like bird flu and swine flu,
Mm-hmm.
So that's where they originate from is, Southeast Asia, that whole region, which is interesting because that's also where the outbreak for the coronavirus happened. But also in 1918, the Spanish flu, that we know it all today, likely didn't come from Spain. But yet around that time is whenever it was being reported the most. So I don't know. What do you think?
It's called the Spanish flu. But I sure believe that French fries aren't French. So
Fair enough.
I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that.
Okay.
I don't think it originated from Spain.
What about you, Nathan?
I'm pretty much of the same opinion as him. It was
okay.
It was certainly known as the Spanish flu, probably because it was devastating in Spain. But not necessarily. It doesn't necessarily.
Yeah, they were the highest. They had some of the highest reported cases, and their whole news circle was spreading that information everywhere. So it's like, one thing to keep in mind is we to this day do not know where the outbreak truly happened. So I'm of the opinion of let's Occam's razor this, and it seems a simple answer is Spain, but that's just me. And then of course bringing a little fact about what's been going on now. with the coronavirus, this is, you hear the term novel virus being thrown around, and this is, when I dug into some research, I found out that this is actually the first novel virus, meaning the first virus of this kind in this family to have mutated and be able to infect us. We've never seen this before. So, what's your opinions on that?
I'm actually going to let Nathan take this one first.
Nathan, what do you think?
Well, I think that going back to the whole like Spanish flu thing, I think back then definitely epidemiology wasn't nearly what it is today, and I think that like
No, of course not.
The unfortunate thing about epidemiology is that really the only way you can further things on this is when outbreaks happen. It's always the destruction that is what leads to new breakthroughs and new discoveries. So I don't know, man. It's always hard to give an opinion on that stuff, because it's like, by the time we learn anything new, the outbreak is already happening and people are dying anyway. It's like it's kind of like they're like the unsung heroes of all this stuff, because by the time their work is complete, it's like the damage is already done and millions are dead. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. So then I guess, final opinions, is the coronavirus, this novel virus, is this the first we've ever seen? Or is the 1918 Spanish flu, did that originate from Spain or not? And last but not least, does the flu virus originate in Southeast Asia? Which one of these three do you two think is a lie?
Oh man, I don't know.
Yeah,
tough one.
A little hard.
Yeah, I think this one's harder than the last one you did.
Well, I know the answers, and I personally think it's actually really easy. So
I'm gonna go ahead and say
all of the above.
They're all lies. You just
yeah, of course.
No, I think. Go ahead. Say the second one's a lie.
The second one, that the 1918 Spanish flu likely didn't come from Spain. You think it did come from Spain?
I want to say no. Oddly enough, even though what was the last one again?
The last one, that the flu virus originates in Southeast Asia, in the Chinese region.
All right, you know what? That one's a lie.
You think that one's a lie?
Go with him on
all right, Nathan. You don't think that the flu originates in Southeast Asia?
I'll trust my gut and go with him.
All right. Well, let's see. Well, I figured what better way to look into, these pandemics than to find something to compare it to. But before I did that, I figured it'd be good to kind of get some definitions on some terms that we often hear thrown around. So, to kind of break that down, pandemics are, defined as an outbreak of a disease that is prevalent over a whole country or area, or the world even, like we're seeing now. Obviously, this is the worst, infectious pandemic that we've ever seen. But it doesn't necessarily have to go that far, because there's many other smaller pandemics that only affected, a couple countries in the region, or even plagues, would be in that same category, but they didn't go infecting the entire world every time. Because there are much smaller plagues, that existed at the time. In movies and sometimes in media, you often also hear about the term patient zero. But whenever I actually looked up the word, it turns out that that medical officials, they actually use the term index case. An index case means the first documented patient in a disease epidemic within a population, or included in an epidemiological study. So this term also doesn't necessarily have to mean the very first person infected. It could be a person who brings infection to an area, such as the people who travel from China to other countries, and then that started the infection in other countries. And then of course the virus, if you don't know, is not the same thing from a bacteria. They are not living cells. They are an infective agent that typically consists of a nucleic acid molecule in a protein coat, and is able to multiply only within a living cell of a host. So that's why, they can wreak havoc on us. But, I think there's 8 characteristics, and I didn't do my notes on this one. It's been a long time since I've done biology. There's 8 characteristics that define something to be a living individual. and viruses only fill like 2 of those categories. So that's why we don't classify them as living.
All right.
And then, of course, the vaccine, the things that is always in discussion now, is there a vaccine that we can use to treat ourselves? So far, there is not. But a vaccine is a substance used to stimulate the production of antibodies and provide immunity against one or several diseases. And that's why it's so important that we, conduct research into this and think of new ways to produce vaccines, which we will touch on later whenever we talk about COVID-19 and how it's been spreading. But let's go ahead and give a little comparison. The mother of all flus, the biggest epidemic we've ever faced prior to this, the 1918 Spanish flu. It's often considered the deadliest pandemic in history, with over 500 million people and 50 million dead worldwide, that were infected with the H1N1 strain with some genes of an avian origin. Likely, however, with everything I looked on, there was a few possible cases, but the one that I saw most likely was a case actually in Kansas, on a farm in Haskell County, but we will likely never know. But near this farm, there was some of the earliest reported cases of men in this town who were getting sick, and near them was a fort. I believe it was like Fort Function or something like that. I can't remember. But they were also reporting many people getting sick in there. However, the Army didn't really take notice because around this time we're also dealing with, World War One. These were new recruits that were going to be shipped out overseas. So, with everyone being crammed in the same area, they weren't really concerned about hygiene. They were really just concerned about getting people out as fast as possible.
Yeah, which, I mean, if this were to happen nowadays, everybody would be washing their hands and cleaning up and everything. But, this is all, years and years of just learning how this stuff works and how it spreads.
Yeah.
And I imagine back then, like, it was just, they did what they thought was best, which was, hey, let's move people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, because I believe I saw one report where there was a fort that had barracks that was nearby, that was suited to hold like 12,000 men, and they wound up pushing almost 68,000 men or 6,800 men in there, and it's just cramming them,
Which, if one of them gets the flu, all
That's right.
Exactly, because everyone's quartered. There's so many people huddled together near stoves just trying to stay warm, and all it takes is a simple cough, and then you spread it to everyone. Because the flu, much like we're hearing now with the coronavirus, it travels through, tiny little moisture droplets in your breath, which is why masks are so important right now. But back then they didn't know that. They weren't listening to the warning signs, because there were people who were talking about, epidemiology in its early stages. And, even though we didn't know what viruses look like, because it takes an electron microscope to be able to see them, because you can't see them through a normal optical light microscope because they're too small. A lot of people didn't know, what they look like, how they interacted with us, but they still could see the effects, the symptoms, and how it traveled. However, like there was also another theory I saw, which stated that Chinese immigrants that were working in Canada for some reason that dealt with Chinese nationalism, and I can't remember, but they were secretly being transported to work on a project for Canada. However, all these men were later found to be sick, with similar symptoms that we would see later on, which brings me to my other point, about how the flu actually does originate in the Southeast Asia region.
Oh.
That's where most of the strains come from, and where we see most of its mutations in the wild come from, because there's still a lot of it's a jungle area, and most of the mutations that we see were strains that originated from this area or a little bit farther west. So, excuse me. However, the flu is able to mutate and transform so much. This is why we were able to see it spread across Europe so quickly, which made it difficult to track, because we didn't know where it originated, because there's so many different, spawn points that people were reporting symptoms from. So we'll likely never truly know.
Well, I do got a question though.
What's up?
Is there a particular reason why they tend to come from Southeast Asia, or just
I didn't look into that specifically, so I don't know for sure. But I figured if we knew, it would have come up, and I didn't see anything about that. So I don't know. If there is a reason, we'll put that in the notes later on.
Yeah.
But I don't know of any specific reason why it originates from there.
It could be anything. Finally, or just
yeah.
God knows. Yeah.
But as the virus was spreading early on, people also began to believe that it could be spawning from Spain or Austria. From birds, to pigs to us. Because Austria also reported some of the larger outbreaks. But due to the global war, many countries would censor information about the pandemic, making news about the disease very slow to spread. This was, an effort to not look bad in the face of their enemies, because, you don't want to look like all your troops are dying, on the battlefield because of some, viral, virus that's going on. Which is why Spain was interesting, because Spain was actually neutral during the World War One, and this is why they were able to report openly about their cases of infections, because they weren't worried about government censorship. They weren't worried about war or making anyone look bad. They wanted to spread the news. However, this unfortunately skewed a lot of people's perspectives, making it look as if Spain suffered more, and that's what gave its name. That's also why some people believe that it originated in Spain. It just seems to make sense. But obviously that's not the case. It was just, censorship, and a good reason why censorship's never good. Because I feel like if information like this spread quicker, we would have been able to do something about it,
Yeah, it seems like one or the other is going to spread faster, whether it's information or the virus,
Yeah. But, at the same time, they didn't have the internet like we do now. Information isn't a push of a button away. So,
yeah.
And to kind of look up to see what we know about, the influenza, and figure out why it acts the way it does, I did a little bit more research. And the influenza actually has 4 subtypes, influenza A through D. That's how they're categorized, with A being the main subtype that is behind all the pandemics that we've had, with swine flu, bird flu, the Spanish flu, all these other pandemics that we've had with it. Those viruses are categorized, by 2 surface proteins, hemagglutinin, which is where we get the H from, that has 18 varieties, and neuraminidase, which has 11 varieties. That's where we get, our H1N1 categorization, and other types. You could have H3N8, which was known as the Russian flu, which was a case that was very common before the Spanish flu came in. Which in part is actually a big reason why this one was so devastating. Most mutations, however, that occur naturally are small in nature, and they're called antigenic drift. And your body will usually be able to protect it with your antibodies, as this new strain of virus is closely related to something you've already suffered before. So you may get the mild sniffles or whatever, but nothing too bad. However, with the case of the 1918 H1N1 strain, this was a completely different shit. This wasn't just a small mutation. This had what was known as an antigenic shift, which has much bigger mutations, making people vulnerable to the virus, because it is believed that the first flu strain will be the one that your body best defends against. But because of what I was talking about, the Russian flu, which was the most common strain that happened before that, H3N8 is such a different strain of H1N1. Most people didn't have those mutations to defend against it. Most people didn't have the antibodies that were, registered to fight against that specific strain of flu. That's why you saw a lot of young people between the ages of 20 to 40 being the ones most likely to get infected, because it's believed that people older than that may have had similar strains that they experienced in the past that were much more mild. So they were more likely to defend against it. Yeah, but with the war going on, everyone's fighting each other, everyone's getting shipped around the world. This is what led to so many rapid deaths of the virus, and it's spreading so quickly. And with very little knowledge of modern epidemiology, it's very hard to know how to necessarily stop the spread, because this virus, or this flu virus was able to come in 3 waves. The first one wasn't necessarily the most devastating. The second one was the worst of it. That's what killed most of the infected patients with H1N1 strain. And another thing to keep in mind, yes, the Spanish flu was the H1N1 strain. However, it is not the same H1N1 strain that we suffered in the early 2000s, because that one that we suffered in the early 2000s had time to change and mutate a little bit here and there. And it does not biologically match up with the H1N1 strain that we saw back in 1918. They're effectively different, you know. So I don't want people to get confused and think that, you know, oh, we're super protected against it, because it's not technically the same thing.
Yeah. Now these things. I mean, I'm guessing the reason they always catch us off guard is because they changed.
Mhm.
They're different. They're not like what we currently are dealing with. We haven't dealt with before.
Yeah.
And it's just we weren't prepared. We aren't prepared.
Yeah, we're still not prepared, but it's the reason we're not prepared now is a matter of our own ignorance rather than us truly not knowing what to do. You know, yes, there is, to an extent, we don't know what to do, but we're learning as we go, and we know so much more about viruses and how they spread now that we should be much better prepared for this, and we're not. You know, so it's not a lack of information; it's a lack of trust in the information. That's the problem.
Oh yeah.
You know, but and this is also where I can understand why people got confused, you know, with the flu with this, because it showed a lot of similar symptoms with, you know, coughing, sneezing, fever, respiratory issues, especially because this virus did something interesting. Because when I looked up how it actually affected you, I noticed a striking similarity with how the COVID-19 affects us currently. Because what the H1N1 flu did is that it caused your body to go into a state of what's known as a cytokine storm. You know, cytokines are certain cells that help your body deal with, you know, immunity issues. However, this effectively, when the virus was introduced into your system, puts your immune response into such an intense storm that it overloaded itself, and that's what killed you off. You know, and we're seeing similar symptoms today, and I'll go a little bit more into it, where, you know, COVID-19, once you're introduced to it, it starts infecting your lungs, and then eventually your body will go into an intense immune response and overwork itself, and then you'll die from something like a bacterial infection. You know, that's what's going to kill you. You know, that's why COVID-19 is so deadly. It's not that the virus itself kills you; it's what it leaves you open to.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like kind of like
What's
AIDS.
up?
You know, AIDS is the same thing. Technically, no one actually dies of AIDS. It's just, you know, like it's what it leaves you open to, like pneumonia or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the reason I think people are so ignorant too is because they're looking at it at one angle, and they got most of the information, but they need to just skew, you know, their outlook on it just a little bit, and then they'll get that critical information that really can form their opinions. You know. But, you know, we've only gone through the first wave now. It's likely to come back, you know, real soon, especially with everything starting to open up. You know, it's a big fear right now, especially here in Houston, that the second wave is going to come and it's going to be very disastrous.
The thing is, like, we aren't taking the right precautions.
No, we aren't.
Opening up the cities and just, I mean, oh my God, dude. I don't know how anybody thinks this is a good idea.
Yeah, well, we'll get there in a minute.
Yeah, that's later.
You know, because now I'm going to start talking about the coronavirus family, and I looked up some more terms that I didn't look up the first time I was taking notes, but they're going to help us understand a little bit more of, you know, what's going on. Now, when describing in epidemiology some infection rates of a virus or a bacteria or whatever, they use what's known as an R0 number or an R0 value. And this just means it's a basic reproduction number. It means how likely is this going to spread from person to person. I think measles had an infection rate had an R0 value of like 18. The flu had one of like 1.3, and COVID-19 has one that's 2 to 2.5. Now, measles obviously seems much worse, but here's the difference. measles killed you so quickly if you didn't have the immunity to it that its ability to spread slowed very quickly. So that's why, we're not talking about measles when we're talking about a new, outbreaks or anything right now, which will become important later whenever we talk about, how the virus has been carrying around and our responses to it. Then there's asymptomatic carriers, which is a term we've been hearing a lot on the news, which is just any infected person who doesn't show any symptoms. So if you're curious what that meant, very simple. It just means you're sick and you don't know it. But then the biggest factor that really leads into why, this is so dangerous, in my opinion, is incubation periods. Now, this is the time it takes to show symptoms from your initial infection. With the Spanish flu and most flus in general, it's a matter of days, of 1 to 2 days from the point that you initially got infected to you showing signs that you're infected. But with the coronavirus, you don't have that. You have weeks sometimes. You could be up to 14 days before you start showing infection. And by then, imagine how many people you could have come in contact in 2 weeks versus 2 days.
Yeah. Pretty scary, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. That's why, to me, that's the biggest scary piece of information about the viruses and this current epidemic. But then, of course, the biggest term I personally hear thrown around is novel viruses. And this just means it's a virus that's never been seen before, isolated from its natural reservoir, spread to a host it previously has never seen before. So this can come from, just a strain that existed out in the wild that we've just never seen before, or it could be a strain that could be reintroduced into animal species that mutates over time and then comes back to us, and it will be officially unrecognizable at that point. So that's a bit more information to help you understand what's going on here. Because with the coronavirus, I looked up, kind of some general information about it. Basically, it's a virus that causes diseases in mammals and birds, and in humans, it's known to cause respiratory tract infections that roughly ranges, from your general common cold to cases of SARS, MERS, and our current COVID-19 pandemic. The reason it's named coronavirus is because of the spike-like appendages around the protein body that are shaped like crowns. Then we named it after the Spanish word, corona. There we go. However, the coronavirus itself is not anything new. It has been things that have infected us before. There are 4 main subgroupings known as alpha, beta, gamma, and delta. These are the common ones that we know. And there are 4 types of these subgroupings that have infected us before. And that gives us the common cold and stuff that we've experienced. That is 229E, which is an alpha subgroup, NL63, which is another alpha subgroup, OC43, which is a beta subgroup, and HKU1, which is another beta subgroup. I didn't see any information about gammas or deltas, if there was any known cases of those infecting us. It just didn't come across, but I also didn't do too much research into it. But then we come to the 3 most well-known novel cases, because SARS and MERS were both novel coronavirus cases when they came out. However, much like we'll see with SARS, a lot of those pandemics didn't spread to the lengths that we see now. Hence why it's a lot harder to remember how they affected us versus what we're dealing with now, which should also serve as a big reminder to how bad it is in general. Because SARS, also known as the severe acute respiratory syndrome, was a contagious and sometimes fatal respiratory illness, as it was a novel virus that appeared in China in 2002 that spread worldwide in a few months. However, it was quickly contained, and no new cases after 2004 were reported, with it killing 1 out of every 10 people infected. And I believe in total it roughly infected about 8,000 people. So only about 800 people died from this. So, it sucks to hear, but, a 10%, kill rate is not the worst thing in the world. But then we have another novel coronavirus outbreak, the MERS virus, the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome. Was an illness that killed 3 to 4 out of 10 people with MERS. The first reported case showed up in Saudi Arabia in September of 2012, with investigations linking the first case to Jordan, and the largest outbreak was found in South Korea. And this had a kill rate of about 35%, with it infecting, I think, a little over 80,000 people. And these numbers are going to be drops in a bucket whenever we really go over when we talk about the viral spread of COVID-19.
Where we're at right now.
Yeah, because I'm about to go into the timeline. So everyone knows Wuhan, China. This is, where we hear the outbreak coming from. People start reporting cases of pneumonia that would be linked to the Hunan meat market. It's a seafood market on December 31st around New Year's. Now, one thing to keep in mind, this is New Year's. Everyone's celebrating, everyone's partying, everyone's close together. It's packed. Yeah, it's very packed. So on January 1st, the Chinese authorities closed down the market whenever they start seeing reported cases that were linked to the Hunan meat markets of pneumonia. However, they don't know it's a virus yet. They don't know anything that's going on. They just know people are sick. Who knows? It could be food poisoning. Then January 7th, Chinese officials claim to have found the source, a new novel virus that we now colloquially know as the coronavirus or COVID-19, named so as it was found in the year 2019. Then 2 days later, in January 9th, the first reported death was reported a 61-year-old man who had visited the market frequently. Around this time, 41 people had become infected, but health officials traced no evidence of human transmission around this event. So they still don't know what's causing it, and there's no evidence to say people are spreading it to each other just yet. A few days later, January 13th, Thailand reports its first case. 2 days later, in January 15th, Japan then reports its first case. And then 5 days later, January 20th, South Korea reports its first cases. Evidence proved that the new virus can spread between people now. And there are 282 cases at this time. So we're not even 3 weeks in, and, we're already seeing almost 300 people, infected in just China and a couple of other countries, Yeah. So this stuff's already starting to take off. This stuff's already starting to spread.
Very.
Around this time, I was, just chilling, working, not really focused. I wasn't even paying attention to the news much, about this going on.
No, nobody was thinking about it. Nobody thought anything.
Well, I mean, it was on the news, but, then you'd hear about, the latest, reports in your local city or whatever, and then you move on.
I definitely don't think that anybody here, or really anybody here in the U.S., not that I know of, thought how big of a thing this is going to be. I think the worst we thought it would be like the swine flu was back in the 2000s, where it's like, oh, some people get it, but like I don't think anybody saw everything getting shut down. Like I don't think anybody took it that seriously.
No, you're right, and it's a lot of it was because we didn't treat it as bad as we should have, because in our collective consciousness, the things that we suffered so far had not been this bad.
Nobody. I don't think anybody alive today has ever seen anything quite like this. Not that I know of, at least.
Unless you were alive around the time of the Spanish flu, you have no fucking clue. So, but anyways, let us move on. On January 21st, our new case reports bring us to a grand total of 314 cases. And in just 2 days, this number would jump up to 581 cases. Wuhan is now put under quarantine by Chinese authorities. On January 30th, the WHO, the World Health Organization, declares a public health emergency as the virus spreads. And on January 31st, 2 members of a family in England test positive as they had recently traveled to China. China has now more than 2,000 cases in just 24 hours and has reached every state in China. And at this point, 21 countries and over 9,800 cases of infected patients have been declared. The United States declares a public health emergency and restricts travel entry from foreign nationals who have been to China within the past 2 weeks, for a temporary measure. February 1st, 3 more countries, including Russia, report cases. On February 2nd, first deaths outside mainland China are reported. A Wuhan resident, 44 years of age, dies in the Philippines, and another in Hong Kong is reported. On February 11th, 43,000 cases of infections are reported and over 1,000 deaths have now been reported. It has now been discovered that it has an infection rate or it has a mortality rate of 3.5%. But it has also been shown, obviously, it is very apparent that it is incredibly, immensely transmittable from person to person. So this is the point here. This is the point where they're starting to spread information about how bad it is, but because people hear that mortality rate of only 3.5%, they're like, oh, that's less than SARS. What are we worried about? You don't realize, yes, it's less than SARS, but already we are getting close to matching the amount of infected people in a much, smaller amount of time, that reach those levels.
I feel like people just weren't looking at the right.
No, they weren't. And there's a whole thing and a whole argument about how statistics can lie to you, and it's very easy to do so. That's why it pays to do your research, and why I felt it was important that we do this, especially this episode right now. It's important to talk about, any way to spread out that information, and stir that discussion and get people educated about what's going on.
Absolutely.
Where was I? There I was, found it. February 14th, Valentine's Day, Egypt reports its first case being the first outbreak in Africa. On February 19th, Iran reports 2 cases in which the patients actually later died that day. Yeah, so now people are dying quicker and they're dropping like flies. February 24th, Italy becomes the worst hit European country. February 29th, the U.S. increases travel restrictions to Iran, South Korea, and Italy. On March 6th, Trump signed the $8.3 billion emergency spending package as global cases reach over 100,000 infected cases. Yeah. March 9th, Italy puts an entire population under lockdown. So everyone's under quarantine in Italy at this point.
Yeah.
March 11th, the World Health Organization declares COVID-19 a pandemic with 118,000 plus reported cases, 114 countries, and 4,291 deaths. March 16th, Canada closes its borders. New York City orders cinemas, bars, and theaters to close. Germany closes its borders with France. On March 19th, China reports that it has finally had no new cases. And on March 20th, California issues statewide stay-at-home orders. And this is more or less within the last month. This brings us to our last month that we've experienced, COVID-19 in our own backyards. This is where everyone now is having those daily reports on the news about washing their hands, the importance of face masks, and gloves and everything, and stay-at-home orders and social distancing. And this is why it's so important, to recognize what's going on, because in a shorter time that it took for SARS to reach 8,000 cases, we have already, I'm trying to do the quick mental math, but we've already reached over 13, 14 times that in the same amount of time of viral infections. So we've already reached a point where more people are dying.
Yeah.
It may only have a mortality rate of 3.5%, but the infection rate is going through the roof. That's why stuff like the R0 value is so important to understand, because yes, that number may only be 2 to 2.5, for, people getting infected per one person. But when you look at that value as it grows, you see just how many people can be infected within its 10th generation of jumping to somebody. I think I looked at the number on the low end, and that's already over 4,000 people, and that's just me going through a neighborhood.
Yeah.
So imagine how much worse it can get when people don't take the precautions that are necessary, staying 6 feet away, constantly washing your hands, protecting your face.
It's so, it really is upsetting how a lot of people are treating this virus. You're hearing about it. Oh, the economy's gonna suffer. Better open up those stores again. Better open up the bars.
Yeah.
I
get it, but I think that this is a necessary evil right now.
Absolutely. Fuck the economy, man. You gotta save people. Right now, this is what matters. Prioritize, the health of, everyone.
Yeah, I think I can probably speak for everybody. We all want things to go back to normal and be able to go out and see movies and go shopping. We all want to do these things, but what's the point if we're going to have to shut it all down again? If more people die, then then are going to die anyway. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like you said, it's a necessary evil, man. We gotta just do it anyway. We gotta just suck it up and stay in for a little while longer, as long as we need to, because otherwise it's pointless. We're just gonna go back to how things were, and it's gonna be worse. So there's no point in doing it right now.
I also think in a way this could damage the economy if we try to open up stores again and theaters and everything. I mean, think about it. A lot of people are still afraid about going out. Why open up all these stores if you're not going to get as much revenue as you normally would? Opening up stores when you're going to get half the amount of customers. I mean, come on.
Yeah, a lot of it doesn't make sense to me, but I mean, I'm a big, I won't say futurist, but I think a lot about, how certain events like this will affect us, and this is, I'm big in the idea of, the new digital society that we're moving into and how we interact with people. I mean, hell, even just going to Mod Pizza yesterday, no one was allowed inside unless you were picking up an order. And if you were picking up an order, it was already put away from everyone else. Yeah. So, and it had your receipt, had your name on it. You just pick it up and then leave, and stuff like that. Or even the curbside pickup like we did, they just brought it out to us because they knew we were waiting outside. Yeah. And stuff like this. I think more mobile ordering, with Uber Eats or stuff like a drive-throughs will become a lot more commonplace. Dine-in, I don't think that's ever going to leave, but it's definitely going to change because now that today people have started opening up businesses now here in Houston, and there's talks about, what businesses are going to be open, what businesses are going to remain closed, how are these businesses that are going to be open operate. A lot of the restaurants that are opening up that are allowing dine-in, still they seat you at least one booth or table length away from everyone else still, so you're still not spreading as much, but because you still have waiters and everybody, coming in and around, they're gonna, be spreading this as well. And this is what's gonna, I think, in my opinion, is what's really gonna push that second wave to start, because Houston in the United States is one of the worst hit, with the virus, and we go on Reddit, we go on YouTube, we go on Facebook, we will be shoved in our face with the news and the economy, and we'll see clips of the nurses and doctors that are dealing with this, and it is just hell. Yeah. It's all hell. So I don't know why people think that opening up is going to be what saves us. That is the biggest, stupidest thing I could think, and I know stupidest is not a word, but
by the way, a lot of
the redundancy blows my mind.
A lot of the protests are coming from people who dismissed the virus at first. A lot of the people who also thought it was somehow connected to 5G. We're not even going to talk about that.
No, we're not talking about that. That's too stupid of a rabbit hole. Oh my God.
I just gotta say, they're the circles, the two circles are just, you can't see my hands right now, but they're basically the same.
He's trying to push two things that don't work together. Yeah. Yeah, it's just, oh God, I can't believe that actually was a thing that was talked about.
You knew people like that were going to pop up.
I know people like that were going to pop up. That doesn't change the fact that it still blows my mind the level of stupidity we've reached. And currently there's now ongoing investigations from China investigating the U.S., with the U.S. investigating China about the outbreak, and, who mishandled what, who should be responsible. There's ethical debates about, how we treat this moving forward for future generations, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of stuff worth discussing, and we just don't have the time for it. But, I do, think this is definitely worth, talking about, some more. It's just, I don't see this, I don't see this as an event that will go back to normal from. I think this is going to fundamentally change us, and and the important question is instead of opening up to some sense of normalcy, how do we reinvent this process? Reinvent the wheel, if you would. How do we change society to where we can keep the economy growing while still not hurting us? We've proven now that a lot of jobs can be done at home. We've proven now that, certain industries that are essential, with what's been going on, food, police, firefighters, health officials especially, all these places. They're still important, but how are we going to change that to make it better for everyone and still keep health risk low? I think that's the important questions we need to ask and research now, which brings me to that a small little tangent I brought up whenever we were talking about VR in the future. I remember I brought up a case I saw about, contactless payment in a hypothetical supermarket where everyone they would get on their phone, from a list, they would pick everything that they want, and then a automatic receiver would take, their card information from their phone and pay that way. You never have to deal with anybody. You never have to physically grab products. It's just a thing that's there for you. It has all your stuff. You walk out. You've already paid. You don't have to physically touch anything except grab your bag. And that's all done through automation.
Yeah.
Nobody's physically assembling those bags together. And I think that might be in some way, something to look towards as this is moving forward, especially with, no contact payments through our phones, with like Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, Google Pay. You have an app on your phone that has your bank account information. You tap it onto whatever payments, receiver there is, and there you go.
Same with debit cards. We have that tap feature on debit cards as well.
Yeah. You look on the back of your card and it has that little wave looking picture on it. That shows you that it has an RFID chip that you can use for wireless payments.
Yep.
I think that's really what's going to be the biggest push. And I think within the next 20 years or so, having that on your wrist, at least like we see with smartwatches, they're going to see another resurgence, as that's going to be just another convenient way to pay and not physically have to interact with anybody.
Yeah.
But that's kind of my 2 cents. I could go down that rabbit hole for a lot longer.
Oh, I actually kind of want to ask you guys, real simple question. How has your life changed ever since the pandemic? I said we start with Nathan.
All right.
Okay.
So thankfully, I'm one of the really lucky ones. I'm able to still work during all of this. I work for a restaurant. We have carry out and stuff, and thankfully, my hours haven't been affected quite as badly as some others. I'm still averaging at like 30 or something hours a week. So thankfully, I'm one of the really lucky ones. I still have cash saved up for if things do go south. But so thankfully, I'm good there. But I mean, it's mainly just been just compared to a lot of other people, my issues are just smaller things. Like they're grocery stores are out of a lot of things that I need, and things with the band that I haven't been able to do, and I like it it affects me, but when I look at other people's problems, it kind of pales in comparison. I feel like kind of a dick for complaining, at that point. You know what I mean? So I guess I'm one of the lucky ones, is what I'd say.
Well, I mean that's good. I don't know, but what about you?
Well, for me, I guess once this whole at the very, very early stages before we started closing everything, there's a lot of talk about it. So I was actually working at a Hot Topic at the time, and really great place. I love those people. I miss them so much.
Yeah.
But we were all talking about it, and we started selling sanitizer.
Okay.
That was one of the first things that was directly related to the pandemic. We started selling sanitizer. A lot of my coworkers were wearing masks and gloves and stuff. I wasn't.
Yeah.
And then I think we also had a few masks that we just weren't selling before all this.
Yeah.
And then they all went. So all this stuff was happening. One day, actually, over time, I noticed that our hours were being cut. Everyone's hours were significantly cut, lower and lower and lower. I was barely getting any work. And then it just happened. Like we got on the group chat, we got a message, hey, we're closing down the mall, the whole mall. So everybody who had a job there was now unemployed. Thankfully, while all this stuff was happening, I was thinking about getting a second job because I wanted more money.
Yeah.
And I managed to get a job at a Dollar Tree. Right. So when Hot Topic closed, I was able to get more hours at Dollar Tree. Dollar Tree, by the way, an essential business.
Yep.
Now, of course, I was just working there like any normal person would. Eventually, we started implementing the whole mask no, we don't have gloves, but the mask thing. So everybody at work is wearing masks. It's mandatory that you wear a mask. Now, what I'm noticing in terms of stock, all the sanitizer, all the toilet paper, anything like alcohol, anything that anybody would use is gone immediately.
Really?
Yeah, first day, all the sanitizer. Actually, sometimes it just takes hours. Give it an hour or two, we're gone, fully gone.
Information spread, man.
Yeah. So what we started doing is we implemented a policy where people can only get 2 of those essential items. So only 2 sanitizers.
Yeah, so no one can hoard them.
Actually, we got to the point where we had to let people only buy 1. The manager's been getting into a lot of fights with customers. People were just like, "Why can't I have 2? I want more sanitizer. This one's for my grandma. Something like that."
I'm waiting for a point where managers are going to start carrying shotguns to defend their stuff.
Oh my god! No,
I can see it though. I can.
Yeah.
Right? Only in Texas.
No, my manager's hardcore. He does not give a crap. He's had customers be like, "Oh, I'm going to call it, HQ or whatever."
Go ahead.
Yeah,
they're going to agree with us.
He straight up gave the lady like the number, his name, and everything because he's like, what are we going to do? Like, well, what are they going to do?
I ain't going to do shit.
Yeah. So that other than that, I've been pretty much staying home, trying to get as many hours as possible, just doing the podcast,
Yeah.
And I don't go out that often. My girlfriend, she luckily works at a Subway, also essential business. They sell food. They just do carry out now. And nowhere near as much business as Dollar Tree. So currently, that's my life. That's where I'm at. We only go shopping every once in a while and just get food, essential items. And a stimulus check. That was very helpful.
Yeah, I still haven't gotten mine.
Yeah, man, I'm sorry about that.
It really sucks.
Speaking of which, what's your story?
Yeah, well, when a lot of this started going on, I was not personally too affected. I just started work over at Goodwill, and I also went through, a small breakup. It's nothing really to get into. It was a short-lived relationship, so I was dealing with that. Suppressing, but it's whatever. But eventually, we started, cutting the staff back in Goodwill. Forgot what it was for a second. And we got to a point where it was only the donation attendants were working and maybe 1 or 2 of the managers. And then after a week of that is whenever they shut down the store. And it'd been like that for the past 3-4 weeks. And today, I just saw that they're open again, but I think it's only for full-time employees because I was part-time. That's why I didn't get a call about coming back yet. But while all this has been going on, this is also whenever I've been planning, to get the van, because we all know I've been wanting and talking about traveling while doing this podcast on the road too, to give a little, variety with what we got going on and be able to talk to other people. But at the same time, I've also been trying to find other work to help me in the meantime. So I just really been throwing all my intention into this podcast, to get it started, get it going, and, see where we can take it, because I felt, okay, out of all the times I've given myself excuses, this is literally a time where I have no excuse because it's a government mandated order. I stay home. So it became a necessity to fill my time with something that I could do. So I decided, I'm going to do something productive and I'm going to work towards one of my goals. And one of my goals was starting my own podcast. And see where I can take it and see if I can make this, my future job, So, I mean, that's what we're here for now.
Out of the bag.
This is episode number 5. We've already passed the first month. That's my first, milestone for me personally. Now I want to see what the next 2 look like and see where I'm at when, 3 months from starting, and then so on and whatnot. And that's just how I'm taking it right now, just, day at a time. Because I always told myself a day that I don't spend doing this is another day I'm behind. So that's just kind of the attitude I've been having with this. And another reason why it's so good that you both showed interest in this, because I also know for me personally, if I didn't have somebody who was also interested in this, I'd have a much harder time holding myself accountable to this. And I want to get it off the ground. I know myself, So
yeah, that's great.
And then, you also hear about how everyone's been considering selling masks and all that. And I've been seeing a lot of people trying to rip people off for masks.
Really?
Yeah, dude, selling them for like
Yeah.
30, 40 bucks. Yeah. It takes like 10 cents of materials, and it's so stupid.
Guys,
Yeah. What's up?
I just everybody who's listening right now. My girlfriend made a mask. It's very simple. It's very rudimentary, out of basically a piece of fabric. I mean, we're talking about a T-shirt.
Yeah.
She got a I want to say it's less than a foot. It's very small. I mean, it depends on the size of your face, but just cut a hole on each side and stretch it over your face. It works. Just as long as you have something.
I mean, I use my purple bandana. That's what I use.
Yeah,
you know?
like you guys don't have to spend that much money on masks, and even if you do want to get something nice, learn to sew.
Yeah, like you got the time.
Yeah.
So, you know, yeah, and with everything going on, you know, now is definitely the time to build new hobbies. And again, this goes into my other opinion about how society is going to change with everyone doing stuff at home now and making stuff at home. I think this might be the catalyst for people to start, you know, making home crafts again, because now everyone's out of work and everyone's doing things online or mobilely. This is the time where I think a lot of people are going to try to capitalize and make their own markets and sell their own products. And you're going to see a lot more handmade goods and stuff like that sold online than we've ever seen before. That's what I personally think. But, you know, I don't know what the future will look like in 5 years, so I won't be able to tell. You know, but I really think that with this happening, this is the big, you know, dynamic shift we needed in this country. You know, a lot of faults and cracks are being exposed in the government that they just can't hide anymore. I mean, hell, they even released UFO footage. Yes, they released UFO footage while all this is going on.
Pentagon.
Yes, for the first time in history. We can't go back from this, by the way. It's also a double-edged sword because, yes, now they're showing UFO footage, but then, you know, I saw that meme, you know, that Simpsons meme where it's like, you know, COVID-19 pandemic spreads worldwide, U.S. Pentagon releases UFO footage, and it's just like Lisa with the piece of paper that says concentrate on it. It's like, yes, pay attention to what's still going on. We still have a virus to worry about.
Yeah.
But with that being said, give it a couple years when we've got a handle on this, hopefully, really hopefully. We can't go back from this point. We won't. People will remember. It will be talked about. And we have to accept that the U.S. government has acknowledged existence of things that we do not understand.
But by the way, all this being said, I really haven't seen a lot of people talk about it.
Yes.
Surprisingly.
Well,
it's out there. It's on YouTube. It's everywhere.
I think also it's kind of important that people don't talk about it right now because we do have something a little more important to worry about.
That is true.
But I don't think that this should be forgotten, and I'm afraid that it very much will be. And that would be a shame to me personally, because I'm a very firm believer in extraterrestrials. I believe they're out there, you know. To have that moment where I don't think anybody's realized, holy shit, like how big of a deal that actually is, you know. But with the big, you know, fiasco that we're dealing with now, it pales in comparison. And I think they knew that. And I think that's in part a reason why they dropped it now. You know, yes, there will be people who are interested, but you're not going to take the entire public opinion away. You know, so, you know, it's more like a fire they'll have to deal with later, I guess is the best way I could say
well,
that.
I mean, if you're gonna show, you know, video evidence of something like that, you might as well do it when there's something else bigger in the news.
Yeah, I mean, hell, did you hear Japan, after that video was released, Japan started forming a committee to create an action plan for their pilots if they were ever to encounter UFOs.
There you go.
Yeah, I heard that today.
Right on.
Oh.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's not just a joke. It's not something that nobody's taking seriously. Like, no, it's big news.
Yeah. No, I saw the footage myself. I mean, that's. I mean, it's black and white. It's kind of hard to see, but I would say that just
it's a UFO.
It's just a UFO.
It's footage that has been leaked before. People have seen it before. I know because I personally remember the video. But this is the first time that U.S. officials have released the video, which is why it's such a big deal. So if people have seen it before and one was like, "Oh, what's that?" and don't think it's a big deal, that's why. Yeah. You know, it has been leaked before. It's just. I'm sorry. It's hard to say how big of a deal it actually is.
Yeah.
You know, so. But, with everything going on, it's important to remember, your social distancing is the best thing that we can do right now. We didn't talk about any of the possible vaccines that are being tested or any of the drug trials or anything like that, which there's more than enough research material out there if you really want to look into it, because there's tons of existing medicines that are being considered that may or may not have an effect on the virus, and there's new ways that we're looking at viruses. In fact, if you want to look it up real quick, Vlad, there is a current vaccine that's being developed that's it's effectively different from how most vaccines are produced. Most vaccines that are produced, they introduce a dead strain or a weakened strain of the virus into a host body. The host body produces the antibodies, and then we recreate them or implant them directly into the individual. That's normally how we take care of vaccine. Yeah. But the strategy we're taking now changes that, and I don't want to, misinform people about how this works. So let me look it up real quick.
I looked up COVID-19 vaccine.
You're good.
That's the news.
Actually, let me look up real quick. What was it? Show vaccines. Sorry, everyone, for the dead air right now. I'm just trying to figure this out because I'm trying to think of what it was that changed the way that they're tackling this problems, and I believed it had a way with how it disrupts the vaccine. Because, like I said, we normally use antibodies as a way to attack viruses and anything that we try to protect ourselves against. But at the same time, this vaccine, I believe what it does is instead of attacking it with antibodies, it uses a chemical compound that affects the surface proteins, and it, in a sense, unravels itself. I can't. I'm going to have to do a bit of digging to find the specific source that I found that from, but I believe that that's how that works.
It weakens the layer on top of
yeah,
it.
It destroys the protein layer that keeps the virus, contained in the RNA material inside, versus just killing it with, your body's natural defense from the immune system.
Oh, by the way, also, we have to be careful with just all the misinformation that's going on online.
So much misinformation.
There's so much of it. There's a lot of videos online of just people making up ways to kill the virus. Which,
yeah.
By the way, don't trust any wacky fun video on Facebook or YouTube that, oh, this thing's legit, I'll try it.
Yeah, like almost all the information I used for this episode specifically, most of it came from the CDC website and the WHO website. Both, trusted sources with a long history of dealing with pandemics and
this isn't the kind of thing that your grandma's tea is gonna kick away. This is gonna take.
Yeah, no. I've heard so much about herbal remedies like that. Like one I heard was like steamed lemon juice and honey, that the vapors were supposed to help you.
Yeah, I think I saw some.
What?
Yeah, I think I saw something. It was just like drink a bunch of. I mean, I'm sure like that's gonna be great if you are sick. Drink a bunch of tea and shit.
Yeah, it might help you feel better, but it's not gonna kill the virus.
Yeah, absolutely not. But there's so much bullshit going around. And you know what's funny?
Jokes.
Oh, jokes are funny. Jokes are actually funny. But a lot of this bullshit's coming from people on top.
Yes.
Like people with power like Donald Trump, straight up saying shit and not having anything to back it up.
Well, I also recently heard that there were 2 doctors from Florida who were openly refusing to wear masks and were telling people that the virus weren't that bad. And many people were following these doctors' instructions. The important thing to note is that they are not, viral and, epidemiologist specialists. They were just people who run a local clinic. They don't specialize in this. I'm not going to go to a heart surgeon if I've got a problem with my leg, you know?
Yeah.
And it's stuff like that and that form of misinformation too. It's not necessarily just from Trump and national news. It's also our local authorities too that we trust to rely on to give us this information. If they misinform us, we're going to be misled too, and our local mandates are going to be affected by it. You know, which is why Houston, you know, opening up is such a bad idea. I personally think at least 3 more weeks would be
Yeah.
a good call to try to minimize the effects of a
Yeah,
second
they
wave.
just
Do I think it's going to happen?
they just extended the stay-at-home order here in Ohio to the end of May. They just did that like today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lucky you. But you know, here in Houston, you know, there's serious talks about how the second wave is going to be so bad because we are not handling it right. But we're so fucking worried about, you know, the mismanagement of money. You know, my thing is the mismanagement of money was something that we should have taken care of a long freaking time ago. We didn't, and we're suffering it now. And you know, going back and trying to fix that mess isn't going to fix the current mess we're in. It's going to make it worse. So we have to figure out how to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, you know, metaphorically. And that's where I was saying, you know, restructuring how we tackle the problem and restructuring how society functions, I believe, is going to be the key to solving
Yeah,
those
and
problems.
you know, anyone looking
Absolutely.
for evidence on, you know, on the way things work, like the way like whatever methods work is, you know, you can tell it's like the tale of the two Midwestern states, man, Ohio and Michigan. Michigan took way longer to get their shit together with like shutting things down and having all these orders and stuff. Whereas Ohio got to it really early, and
Yeah,
Michigan's only 3 hours away from where I live right now. They have many more times the amount of cases and deaths, like a lot more, like it's crazy how many more,
yeah.
you know, right next door.
I used to live in Illinois for about a year with my ex, and you know, I've got a lot of friends that still talk to up there, and they're telling me about their stay-at-home orders and how everyone else is getting infected, and is you know, you're hearing the same story over and over and over. It's just
Yeah.
ridiculous, you know. It's just it blows my mind the level of ignorance so many people can have. You know, both going to the extreme of cleanliness and get the fuck away from me, towards the completely oblivious of, oh, it's not that bad. I've had the flu. I'm okay. You know, it's not the same thing.
Absolutely.
You know, it is a completely different virus, and it is something we've never had to interact with before. Just because you dealt with flu, okay, great. If there's a flu, I'll let you know. You'll be fine. But with the coronavirus, even with the things that we have experienced before, this is the 3rd novel coronavirus we've experienced. You know, and it's a SARS-like virus, which is why you'll also see it labeled as SARS-CoV-19. You know, but it's not. It needs to be understood. It's not SARS specifically, because this specific strain is, you know, increasingly, you know, viral and infectious. It is increasingly, you know, transmittable, and that's the danger factor because with how fast it spreads and with its long incubation time, it takes, you know, up to 2 weeks before, you know, you start showing symptoms. And many epidemiologists think that you are still able to transmit during this time, which is why, you know, they're saying so many people are asymptomatic carriers and they don't know. So they think they're okay and going out into public. They're going into a restaurant. They're going into Kroger's. They're going somewhere. They're getting all those people infected where they go, you know?
Yeah.
And it's because they think they're okay and they're not taking the proper precautions. That's why it's so important that even if everything seems fine, that you take care of yourself, you know?
Absolutely.
It's just, I can't stress how much I get mad at seeing so many people on my way over here, and I see so many people without their masks. So many people just you know, interacting in public like it's no big deal. I'm just like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You know, I want to scream at people sometimes. You know, it's just like it's like it's not even necessarily about being outside. It's like not even having the proper personal protection. No masks, no gloves, nothing like that. No hand sanitizer. No, I at least have a mask. You know, I at least try to cover myself every time I go outside, and it's just. And most of the people that I see do it are people that are older than me. They're in their 30s, their 40s, or even older. You know,
people most likely to get affected by
yes, you know, people with lower immune systems. I'm young as hell, but then you hear about all those partiers in Florida
Yeah.
getting affected, and you're just like, yeah, it doesn't matter if you're young, it's still going to get you.
Yeah.
But we're reaching the end here. And Nathan, I'm really glad you're able to join us, with this discussion today. But I feel like at this point, if we're going to be able to talk anything else, we're going to be talking about very niche cases, and I think we've hit it over the head enough how important it is, to keep your distance and keep your personal protection on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm glad you guys had me on, man. I feel like I learned a lot today.
Absolutely, and that's what I try to do. That's what I want to encourage. I want to encourage discussion. I want to encourage education. Especially with something as important as this going on, it could not be a better time to take advantage and really learn how to take care of yourself through all of this.
Yeah.
And while all this is going on, we're still going to be working hard on the podcast. We're still going to be, producing episodes every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're still going to be trying to grow as we, more solidify our structure. Nathan, as always, it's great to have your music. I know you've shown interest in helping out in the future as well.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with the stay-at-home order being extended here in Ohio. I mean, even if I do stuff with the band, I mean, that's I've still got a lot of stuff to do here at the house. With nothing else to do, man. I'm looking forward to composing more music for the podcast. I've got lots of ideas. I just got to sit down and get them out of my head and onto the computer.
Absolutely. And like I've said, you're always welcome on the podcast. We could always use extra guest hosts because I like having other people's opinions and seeing other people, their personal take on the things that we discuss here, and encourage more discussion and different views that we can use and show to people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really great to have a third opinion on just the podcast.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, like I said, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Of course. And like always, you can always find us on Instagram and on Twitter right now at Files Obscura. We're hoping to release more content. I know we're discussing, we're very early, we're very small. I know that, but I'm feeling creative. And I know we're discussing, stuff like t-shirt ideas and stickers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We are still working on the website. And the only reason we're not done with that yet, I know I've brought it up and I said, by now I imagine we have it. It's because I'm still working on getting the van right now. That's my biggest priority because in my personal life, I'm trying to get a van so that way I'd be able to travel the country and just explore, get to see what America has to offer. Really, I'm only young once, and with this virus, going around, especially, it just reminds me that I've only got this one chance. So that's why I haven't gotten the website up yet. But we hope to have that up soon, in which case we'll be able to open up more possibilities to our audience. We'll be able to show everybody where to go to find our episodes. I know a lot of people, most of our listeners are actually on Spotify, which helps a lot.
Oh, yeah.
But then, we also have, we're trying to reach more audiences on Anchor. I know we are supposedly also on Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. And it's just really trying to expand in that. So, right now, word of mouth is all we got. But I know we're going to really try to be working on our Instagram game and really boost our lost the word here, audience. There we go. Don't know why I lost that word for a second. But yeah. And with, awesome help like you, Nathan, I'm sure we're going to get there soon. I know Vlad and I, we both have goals that by June we want to have the website up, and that we are talking about, YouTube, in which we'll upload the podcast, but we may experiment with other content as well. But everything is kind of, just in the brainstorming phases right now. I know you seem to have some interest in helping us too, but as always, I know you got your own personal life that you got to worry about. So no, I'm not going to hold you to anything if something comes up. But like always, I want to see what you can bring, to the podcast, because I really enjoy your outlooks and opinions on the topics we discuss and the ideas that we have for this podcast.
Yeah, definitely, man. This is just another little, pot to put on the stove, so to speak. It's just a matter of which burner to put it on.
Right. Yeah, I feel that. So with everything, like I said, check out Instagram because in the next few weeks we're gonna try to be pushing for more content on there, especially as we're sketching and doodling ideas. We are also going to try to see about setting up Patreon in the future, but we're also going to be looking at advertising here really soon. Um, we won't be having an advertising spot on this episode, but we are considering starting on the next episode. We might have, some advertisements. We're going to see how that works out. So as always, we wish you all the best. We hope you all stay safe. Nathan, once again, thank you for coming on. Hope to talk to you again and hope to see what you can bring to the
Absolutely, I'm
table.
stoked.
Absolutely. So with nothing better to do, we are going to sign off.